Timothy Wanyonyi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members have purposively gone to the Honorable Timothy Wanyonyi, and I'll also purposively go to the Honorable Kosgei for very obvious reasons, Honorable members. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Picking up from where my good friend, Honorable Nabi, has left, Madam Speaker, positions of acting. The succeeding governments have kept civil servants in acting positions for too long. One of the the case I remember very well is the CEO of the CDF board, Mr. Mbuno. He was kept in acting position for 6 or 7 years. Then after that, you see now they come and try to confirm his appointment. I don't know why somebody would act for so long like that when you know very well he has qualified for that position. He is a person with competencies that have been approved and all that. Madam Speaker, even this amendment, I don't know what mischief is trying to attain, because, Madam Speaker, people who are acting positions, and if this amendment says that this amendment is to create more vacancies for young people, Madam Speaker, I think we can do better than that. There are many ways we can create jobs for young people. We must increase the more opportunities in the public service, because people who are retiring vis-a-vis people who are coming up to employment, the ratio, I think, is not the same. So as we discourage these things of people acting in position for too long, there should be a policy that creates job opportunities at different levels of government, at different agencies, and even at the private sector, informal sector, and all that. And Madam Speaker, even in this amendment, we need also to capture mandatory retirement age is 60 years. For people with disability, 65 years, it must be captured that also the people with disability must be also given to because sometimes people with disability, they get into employment job market very late in life. Some are employed when they are over 40. And when you now tell them they retire at that age of 60, mandatory 60, then you disadvantage them. So we just wish that this amendment will bring sanity in the public service, so that people who are given acting, maybe is acting in a position to wait maybe for replacement or something that's happening, or as I say, who has got rare competencies that cannot be captured by somebody else. Because this, Madam Speaker, I believe that we have abused this position by allowing somebody sitting in a position not very sure whether he will be there tomorrow. And that even affects performance, because somebody who is not guaranteed of his position may not perform very well. But when somebody is given a position and knows very well is going to serve up to this time, he will be able to perform and can inspire others also to perform. And especially those who are sitting in senior positions, Madam Speaker. So we just want to see the public service and including the appointing authorities, especially, I remember in the last government, many CEOs of parastatals, almost 80% of them were in acting capacities. So you wonder why, if they put him in an acting capacity, why wouldn't they not find a way of either replacing him or confirming him so that he can continue? So, Madam Speaker, I just want to add my voice, but I also want to say that people with disability must also be given, when we are doing this amendment, Madam Speaker, we shall amend at a later stage to include persons with disability in this amendment, Madam Speaker. Thank you for giving me a chance to speak on this.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Jackson Kosgei, nominated member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think my colleague team has handled. I wish to have a voice here that in this bill, as we do amendment, Madam Speaker, it must come out very clear in treating what one would consider as a bureaucratic marginalization, a silent policy that removes certain people and denies them certain enjoyment in public service. So one such is a silence on, is it 80, section 80 of this amendment? It is not mentioning and coming out clearly to include persons with disability as one of the targeted in terms of making it clear on the retirement. It has been done well in the Public Finance Management Act. This must also be reflected in the public service, that persons with disability retire at the age of 65. We have a case, Madam Speaker, somebody, Francis Manaibei, from Central Bank, who was retired 2022 at the age of 60, and the bank would not consider even the public service circular that came out in 2012, and also the subsequent amendment on the Public Finance Management Act, because in some laws it is not recognizing. And I think this is the right time, Madam Speaker, this is considered and be reflected in law. So I think, as team mentioned, Honorable, that later on in this detailed amendment, I plead with the mover to accept that this be made an outstanding, identifiable area of treatment by this particular law. Second, Madam Speaker, is that, as my colleagues have said, this is to deal with the issue of acting that has been witnessed in public offices. I think it is important to be clear on this because some officers have acted in offices perpetually without any consideration. And when the new recruitment is done, some of them are thrown out, yet they have carried out a good work in the service simply because of other consideration. And finally, it is why I support is because our population generally, as a country, is a young nation. We have the population at over 50%, and I think the best way to do it is to find a way of absorbing them, this being one of the ways and not the only way, but we must balance between experience, what the nation needs, and not punish and use age as a punitive alternative for us to get a room for someone else. We don't have to deny one to give another, but we need to balance between the two considerations. With that, Madam Speaker, I support the bill.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Rahim Dawood, member for North Imenti. Order, member for North Imenti. The Honorable, I don't want to use your other name. The Honorable Felix. Because I can see where you are on the screen, I'm very sure that we'll get to you. What was your intention? Because you rose on your feet and you are raising up your hands. I'm just sticking on the screen. Honorable members, we have very clear instructions. If you do not have a card, I am not going to allow you. Those are the instructions from the Speaker. For the rest, I'll follow the queue.
Madam
So
Speaker,
now it is time for the Honorable Rahim Dawood, member for Imenti.
Madam Speaker, thank you for giving me this opportunity. Madam Speaker, I want to join my colleagues in supporting this bill, the Public Service Commission bill. Madam Speaker, last year in November, my bill, the Public Service Values and Principles Bill, has already gone through, where it says that we need to have all the facets of communities, of disabled, of women, of gender, together with the counties where people come from, to be specified. And Madam Speaker, already we have gone to, it has gone to the Senate, and hopefully it should be low. Madam Speaker, I agree with Honorable Major Donk in that this bill, we need to specify the 60 years as retirement age. We should not leave it to regulations, because if we leave it to regulations, people will stay. Madam Speaker, there is another portion in this bill where Major Donk has not touched on, is where even if you pass the retirement age, you can be contracted and you can still be employed through a contract. Madam Speaker, there should be no reason to employ anybody on contract because they have special skills. A lot of us have got special skills, a lot of the youth have got special skills, and we should definitely give space to the youth to come up, because how are they going to develop any skill if we say we are just going to be employing retirees on contract after the retirement age? Madam Speaker, on the acting capacity, Madam Speaker, I know one of the directors, I will not mention, he was there for 6 years as in an acting capacity, always in an acting capacity. Madam Speaker, I agree that they should be there only for a maximum of 6 months, and after that, Major Donk has suggested that they do not get paid. Madam Speaker, I want to put a further amendment to that and say that if after 6 months, the Public Service Commission cannot recruit any other person, then that person should be confirmed to that position so that at least they understand the gravity of the matter, because having somebody in a position 6 months, even again, it is against the labor laws, because you cannot employ somebody on a casual basis for more than 6 months. You have to make them permanent after 6 months. So, Madam Speaker, we need even to put a rider there that after the 6 months, if Public Service Commission has not recruited, then that person will be confirmed to that position and no longer an acting position. Madam Speaker, regarding the 60 years, it is a bit debatable, but I believe that it is the right way to go so that we get people in the younger generation below 60 from 40 or 30 getting into management positions. Madam Speaker, my bill, the Public Service Values and Amendments, Principles and Values Bill, it talked about giving fair chance to the disabled. Madam Speaker, as we are talking right now, the public service, and I thank my colleagues, Honorable Tim and Honorable Bishop Gosge, it is less than 5%, which is specified in law, that 5% should be there, minimum of 5% of PWDs should be employed in the public service. Madam Speaker, as we are talking, it is much, much below. The same case with women, Madam Speaker. And if we go to talk about the communities who are employed, Madam Speaker, it talks about the Public Service Commission to make a report every year on how they have satisfied the values and principles of public service. But Madam Speaker, unfortunately, when the data is released, we see disproportionate representation of some of the communities who are in public service. Madam Speaker, some communities, I mean, if we have got 43 tribes or 44 at the last count, some are not even represented, even one, forget 1%, even one is not represented in the public service. Madam Speaker, we need to get to the bottom of this, and we need to tell the Public Service Commission to up its game, and if they cannot perform, Madam Speaker, we need to change it. With those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I support this bill with a few amendments. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Atandi, member for Alego Usonga.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I would have opposed this bill if it was not for the fact that it is here because of my colleague and friend, the Honorable Major Donk. Madam Speaker, retirement age, ideally, is not something which should be fixed in law. It is something which should only exist in the policy documents of government, so that every government that comes into place, they can easily tamper with the retirement age of its population. I say this, Madam Speaker, because I believe that retirement age should be determined by some factors, which I'm going to cite. One of the factors which should be used to determine retirement age is a demographic trend of a country. For example, Madam Speaker, in our country right now, we have a more youthful population. About 70% of our population are youth. About between 20 to 15% constitute the seniors, the people I call the seniors. So if you have a trend like what we have now, then retirement age should actually be lowered so that we address the needs of the demographic population of our country. So if you ask me about retirement age today, I would say it should be brought down to 55 or 50, because the people we need to take care of are more in the lower bracket than in the higher bracket. If you go to countries like USA, those countries are having problems with the aging population. There are more older people than young people. So the retirement age in those countries is higher. Like now, US, I think, is 67 to 70. So that's why I mean, Madam Speaker, that it cannot be set in law. So if we pass a law fixing retirement age to 60, and next year or the years after, there are more older people, we need to increase that age to 70. Because if there are more older people in a country and the retirement age is lower, it means you are putting a burden of keeping the older people in a country. It's going to be very higher, and it's going to affect the performance of the economy of our country. So, Madam Speaker, I sincerely feel that my colleague would look at this law and look at it in line with the democratic status of our country. The other factor, Madam Speaker, which I believe is important in determining the retirement age of our country is gender. Because, Madam Speaker, in some countries like Indonesia, you find that the female gender, they have a lower retirement age. And I believe in Kenya, we need to do that. Because given that right now we are having social problems, which are caused by parentage problems, parenthood, weak parenthood. We're having things like alcoholism, things like, LGBTQ, all these problems. We need to allow our female gender to retire early so that they can also go and attend to the challenges we're having like these ones, which most of them are happening, by the way, because parents are not engaged in taking care of their children. They are working. Kila mtu anazunguka huku na huku. So, Madam Speaker, this gender equation is something which I think this House needs to take note of. Because we are, in as much as we want people to earn money, but we also should be interested in the future of our country. What kind of people are we raising? Madam Speaker, the other factor which I also think should be considered when looking at retirement age is that we need to separate between private sector and public sector. So that if you're working in the private sector, you could be allowed to retire earlier. But people working in public sector, for reasons that we know, that public sector, we need people who have been there longer to continue serving because of history and track record.
Order, Honorable Member for Lego Usonga. The Honorable Nyenze, are you on an intervention?
Speaker, I want to contribute.
Or you are just being strategic?
Yes.
You may proceed to conclude, Honorable Member for...
Thank you. So Madam Speaker,
Samuel Atandi, you may proceed.
I was saying that we need to separate between people in public sector and people in private sector. And my view is that if you're in private sector, we need to maybe have a shorter retirement period than if you're in public sector. Public sector, we may need people who to stay longer because of the history and, the experience of public sector is very specific. So that's something which we need to put into consideration. Madam Speaker, there are countries that have given us very good examples of how to manage retirement age. If you go to a country like Thailand retirement age is 55. because the youth are more than the elders. So, but they are always increasing the retirement age every year. Every year they add, because they are checking the advancement of these ages vis-a-vis the resources they have. So, Madam Speaker, as I said when I started, that if it were not that this motion was brought by somebody who is my close friend of mine, I would oppose it in totality, because this is not something which we need to put in law. If we put it in law and tomorrow the aging demographic trend changes so that we have more older people, if the population of our country, say 50% are older, you cannot reduce the retirement, you have to increase the retirement age so that the people who are older can continue working. But if the youths are more, then you lower it. Right now, actually, we need to have it at 55 or 50, because all these youths that we are graduating every day, where are they? They are not getting jobs. So let the old people leave early, the young people get the jobs right now. Madam Speaker, thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Indikiri, member for Buri.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This bill basically addresses three key issues: the age of retirement, the acting, and the contract. Madam Speaker, I think I agree with all the members, and specifically the mover, that we need to make amendment on clause 2, 3, and 4, where it is addressing pertinent issues that affect employees' service. Madam Speaker, I would wish to state that the mover considers Section 81, because Section 81 also carries the age 50. So in your attempt to make the amendment on 80, please consider also making amendment on Section 81, because it flows. Because if you leave it without making an amendment, then you are not going a good justice. We shall come back again. Madam Speaker, I totally agree that it is very important that we put a fix on the age limit. Mr. Speaker, we cannot leave it on regulations. Madam Speaker, we cannot leave it on regulations. Let us entrench it in the law. That way it will become more easy to enforce. Because why it is very weak is because as it is now, it's on the regulation. And therefore, implementing and executing it, it becomes very difficult. Madam Speaker, there is no reason as to why people should not retire at age 60. I think it is good. That's where we ended. But also we need to take caution that as much as we are talking about the age limit, we should ask ourselves the percentage of Kenyan population that has militant in the employment sector. So when we are making the law, we need to be very careful that going forward, we might eliminate what we think is the most productive age of the population. Madam Speaker, I don't quite believe that by putting the cap on the age, 60, is the solution to unemployment in this country. And that's why I'm standing with the President when he's moving all over and trying to do whatever he can to create more jobs for our people, not to enter into employment, but to enter into self-employment. Madam Speaker, there is no reason as to why someone should continue active for 3 months, let alone 6 months. What's the reason? To me, I think the shorter period, the better, because any organization that follows the procedures that has work and code of conduct and guidelines, the succession program need to be managed before the retirement age. So, Madam Speaker, I think the problem that we're having is the operations and the management of these institutions, which need to be taken care of through a succession program, not waiting until the people are put on acting capacity. Madam Speaker, there is a serious problem, and it is cutting across all the sectors of this country. Madam Speaker, some people are taking employment acting capacity and the weakness to create opportunity for people to continue serving. and others to see an opportunity for them to put people into those positions. Madam Speaker, the TSC is notorious. TSC is very notorious on this. Again, I agree with the honorable member who said this issue of having people retire and then they continue serving again and acting capacity at the same time. I think that is wrong and it should not be encouraged. Madam Speaker, the contract, Madam Speaker, I think the government is running away from responsibility. It is easier and cheaper to employ people on contracts, given the circumstance of the economy. But now what we are saying is that there are some sectors in this country, particularly the teachers, who should not be put on acting capacity, on contract. So, Madam Speaker, with those few remarks, I support this amendment, but I ask the mover, please, to make sure that you consider Section 81. On a final note, Madam Speaker, the issue of pensions is becoming a very serious problem. There is a problem at the pensions department, paying of pensions for our retired people. Some of them have not been limiting retirement funds regularly, so that when the people are retiring, they have no money. But I think we must make it a deliberate effort that all the retirees, because there's a procedure which is in the Public Service Act, that how the pensions will be paid. They need to stick to that, and they need to ensure that when somebody is leaving service, maximum waiting period is not more than 3 months. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Edith Nyenze, member for Kitui West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to say that I support this amendment with of the Pension Service Commission. And from the onset, I will say with amendments. And one of the things which I want to talk about is the acting capacity for the employees, which is taking too long. And the committee did a good service to this act by saying that it should be reduced to 12 months, but still 12 months is quite a long period, because all along the employer knew that this person who is maybe the end of the department will retire at this particular time, so they should not be given too much time to act, because all along they had known that the person is going to retire. So there should be proper planning, a proper succession planning of the organization to know who is going to take over after this person retires. There should also be some training of the employees who are already in place, so that immediately this end of department retires, that they should be in a position to take over. Because it's actually very disappointing for one to work in an acting capacity for too long, and then when they now get a replacement, this person is not considered who has been acting on acting capacity. It can be then disappointing after working for so long, only getting allowance without being properly remunerated. I want to say that it's very important for an organization to prepare its employees, especially when they just get employed. They should come up with a pension plan, a pension scheme, so that in the event of retirement, this person is well equipped with the proper remuneration or proper pension money, which will help them in retirement, so that they don't link around in the organization. It's also good to prepare them for an organization, both in the civil service and in the private sector. They should come up with a medical scheme. They should not only a medical scheme, but a medical cover which would also work after retirement. And that plan is there, and they should start contributing early when they people get employed, They contribute towards their medical cover after retirement. They also contribute towards their pension after retirement. And this would ensure that once they retire, then there will be no fear of going out for retirement. The pensionable age of 60 years and 65 years for people with disability, this one I support because it's better to put it in the Act instead of in just being in the regulations, because this one can be be changed anytime. So I support that. Then the other thing, Madam Speaker, which I want to talk about is that employees, that is after retirement, people should be paid immediately. There are some, especially teachers, who are after retiring, they take too long to be paid. The government should ensure that the pension money is paid at the right time. Then, Madam Speaker, I will also comment on the rate of unemployment in our country. It's quite high, and it's also very disappointing to see, especially teachers who stay for too long before being employed. You see a teacher who is almost attaining 45 years, 50 years, and has not been employed by the Teacher Service Commission. And Madam Speaker, you will also agree with me that there is a lot of imbalance in our country, especially when it comes to employment of teachers. You find some regions where teachers have been employed who have just left college. Others leave college and they take too long to be employed. So there should be some balance. So what happens to that one who gets employed at 45? Because after that 45 years, they will not get any employment. So what will happen to them? So there should be some balancing in the country, especially on the employment of teachers. As I've said, in some regions, they are employed immediately. Other regions, they wait, and it's very, very disappointing to see them having been trained as P1 teachers and they don't get employed. So, Madam Speaker, I support and also say that there should be proper training, proper planning, so that by the time one comes to retire, that the institution knows who is going to take over. We should not encourage even waiting for 3 months, even waiting for 12 months. It should be after retiring. After one retires, they go home and give room for another person to take over. Because imagine acting indefinitely, acting without knowing whether you are going home after 3 months, after 6 months. You will not be productive in the institution because you are just planning on when and how you are going home. So let's have proper planning, proper succession planning. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I support.
Thank you. The Honorable John Waweru, member for Dagoretti South.
Honorable Speaker, I thank you. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank the Honorable Benjamin Gadhira Mwangi, because this is a bill that he had brought to the House in the previous year, and I'm glad that it has now seen the light of day. And I want to say right from the onset that I do support. Madam Speaker, one of the points that is being made against the argument that the Honorable Member for Embakasi Central is making is that there are people who are saying that there is reason for extension of time for an individual who has special skills. Madam Speaker, we ought to ask ourselves, if an individual has been employed in the public service at the age of 20-something or 30-something, it means that this individual will have worked for not less than 30 years before they are due for retire. An entire institution cannot be unable to prepare a successor for such an individual. And so, Madam Speaker, there is no argument that can be made that there is one individual who ought to be retained because they've got special skills. So on that point, Madam Speaker, I want to not only support this amendment, but also say here that when it comes to the third reading, I shall be seeking to re-amend the provision so that the age of retirement is reduced to around 55 years, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is a country that has a median age of 19. Today, this is an extremely young country. It means, Madam Speaker, that with every year, when we are graduating in excess of 500,000 individuals from Form 4, and in excess of 150,000 graduates every year, Madam Speaker, it means that there are very few spaces available for absorption into the public service and a huge number of supply for people who can work. But Madam Speaker, we also have to think about it in the flip side. Look at institutions that have retained old staff. Madam Speaker, if you look at what was previously the Kenya Post and Telecommunication Corporation, if you look at Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, if you look at Kenya Railways, they are retaining what you would call redundant staff. Why, Madam Speaker? Because we are moving into a new age. We are moving into a new world. We are talking of new technologies. There is an aging population in the public service that is not fit for purpose for a time such as this. It is a time when we need to be onboarding new knowledge, new technologies, new approaches. But even when we talk about representation, if it is such a young country where 75% of this country's population is under the age of 35, then it is only representative that even the public service ought to be reflecting such age demographics. Madam Speaker, the second matter that this amendment seeks to cure is the mischief of the misuse of the position of an acting staffer. Madam Speaker, it is condoning mediocrity to say that we have institutions in the public service that cannot prepare for succession for less than 6 months. Madam Speaker, what is the business of an individual acting in a position for 6 months if this individual cannot be confirmed into that position? It means then every judgment is pointing to the inability of that individual to perform the duty. Then why do we have to retain them for 6 months or for 12 months if they are unable? Madam Speaker, we should be looking at building institutions, not individuals. Any individual is replaceable in any entity, in any institution, in any position. Madam Speaker, we cannot be retaining certain positions for individuals. That would mean that our institutions are so weak that they cannot stand in the absence of a certain individual. Madam Speaker, there is a point to be made about the social fabric of this country. We are bemoaning a situation of a drunken population, misuse of drugs, the abuse of alcohol. We are talking about social ills like we are seeing the femicide matter that we were prosecuting here on Valentine's Day. How does it connect to this topic, Madam Speaker? It connects in this way, that in the African tradition, there was a very good demarcation of the work that should be done by each age set. If I look at my culture, there was a place for the Njama. There was a place for the Kiama. There was a place for the warrior. This warrior position, which is what we call the working population today, was a preserve of an individual at their prime. At your prime, you are able to work, defend the community. You have the energy and the agency and wherewithal to work hard at that age of being a warrior. Then you graduate to the decision-making body, the lower house, which is the Njama. When you perform very well in the Jama, then you can be accommodated into the Kiama. The Kiama stands at the prime, at the top. This is the advisory role. You have already retired from active duty. You have already retired from superintending, and now you are at the level of oversighting and offering wisdom. But what happens today, Madam Speaker? Today, we have individuals who spend their entire life working in one institution. At the age of 70, they are still holding to that position. These individuals, Madam Speaker, will never get the opportunity to spend time with their children, to spend time with their wives, and to spend time with their grandchildren. So what happens? It is that there is nobody today at home to advise the young people on what they should do with their life, because people are being held in positions beyond their well-working years to an extent that now the fabric of the society is disintegrating. Madam Speaker, the point I am making is that an individual can give their best years to public service up to the age of 55, after which they can get time to retire back at home and give the knowledge and wisdom that they have accrued to the next generation. And Madam Speaker, in that way, we shall be able to start facing head-on the problems that we are having, the problem of drug addiction, the problem of alcohol abuse, the problem of negative masculinity. These young boys do not have people to mentor them because their parents and their grandparents are stuck in offices all the way up to the age of 65 and beyond. Madam Speaker, there are dispensations and jurisdictions that have a place for someone who has worked extremely well. Look at the individual or the personality of the member of parliament for Kamukunji. If we were in such dispensations, what normally happens, and I'll give an example of the UK. If you have served with distinction, and it is notable that you have a special skill that must be retained for the service of the country, they have an automatic admission to the House of Lords. What is our equivalent of the Senate? So much so that the brilliant people who have served in public service and have the wherewithal, have the wisdom, have the energy to continue serving, they have a place where they can upwardly be displaced to serve even better. Madam Speaker, the point I'm making here is that it is time we relook at our constitution and look at how the bicameral house has served us for the last 10, 11 years and see if there is a way we can make our Senate to be a bit more esteemed, a bit more useful to our country by having positions where we can admit exemplary individuals who have served in public service, who we think have something that we can retain beyond the years that are given for public service. And to my mind, the place where we could be admitting these people, if we were to amend our constitution, would be our Senate. And that way, we would be moving it to be the ultimate upper house. Because as we speak today, the Senate is even struggling to find its footing in the pecking order, because the power of the purse is in this house, the power of budget is in this house, to an extent that at times the Senate is found to be having no business to do, and they have to look for business from the parliament to go and prosecute it in Senate. Madam Speaker, I was standing to support the efforts of the honorable member for Embakasi Central and say that this is timely, and in due course I shall be making amendments so that we can remedy and cure the mischief that these amendments seeks to cure. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity.
Thank you. The Honorable David Mboni, member for Kitui Rural.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this by civil servant. Madam Speaker, if you recall, this retirement age was moved from 55 to 60 for 3 reasons. One was to put the retirement age at the same level with East African countries. 2, to reduce pressure on the pension bill, which was actually increasing in high rate. 3 was to retain officers in the civil service, because there was a very big gap, because government has frozen recruitment of civil service. So you realize that for around 10 years, there was no new recruitment in the civil service. But one who asks himself or herself, after increasing the retirement age to 60 from 55, did we resolve those issues? Because the pension bill still remains very high. After retirement, people are not getting their retirement benefits immediately. Actually, if you go to rural areas, as members of parliament, we are always having people coming to ourselves, asking us to intervene so that they can they can get their pensions. And of course, increasing the rate, the age from 55 to 60, that increment of 5 years, you can see the people who are supposed to retire, the number should have been replaced by the younger people. Actually, to me, to some extent, it increased the unemployment rate. I'm a former civil servant, and I've witnessed people who acted for more than 5 years. After retirement, they act for more than 5 years. So this bill, I think I should actually bring an amendment so that if somebody has to act, let this person act for 1 year or 2 years maximum. Because there is nobody who has monopoly of knowledge, who has monopoly of experience. During that person's work, there must be a device somebody else who can learn from him to take over after he retires. The acting at age of at 6 months, to me, this is a very short time because I've seen people acted like the CEO CDF has acted for more than 7 years. I even have a relative who have acted for more than 1 year in the civil service. But I think the proposal should be 12 months, and after 12 months, this person should be confirmed on permanent basis for the job. I've seen people who have acted even for 2 years, 3 years, and at the end of the day, they don't get the job. Somebody else from somewhere, from private sector, is brought to that position, and that person will be trained by the person who has been acting. Madam Speaker, I think it's high time civil servants should be promoted to those positions. Instead of getting people from private sector who don't even understand how public sector system operates, they should be confirmed. The issue of they should not be paid after 6 months, I think that's not the fault of the acting officer. That is the problem with the family service. Madam Speaker, the issue of unemployment rate in this country is stand around 5.5, and I think that this is very low. To me, it should be over 10%, and it's one of the highest in the region, if not in the country. And the reasons, and this high unemployment rate, most of private sector companies have taken advantage of this. You go to companies, most of the people are on temporary basis, are casuals. You let somebody has been a casual for 10 years, 5 years, because the supply for labor is more. So you don't even need to employ them at permanent level basis. The issue of employment, I think, should be a national conversation. We should have actually a national conversation. The way we are taking it as a country, we are taking it in very rightly. You know, when we say we are going to have affordable housing and we are going to employ people, those are temporary jobs. After the houses are completed, those people, what are they going to be doing? So to me, we need to address several issues. One, the reason for unemployment in this country, slow economic growth. That's the first one. The economy is not expanding. Our economy has been growing at 5% for the longest. In the Vision 2030, the proposal was the economy should grow at 10% for 10 years. But it has never moved from, on average, it has been at 5%. The second one is due to high taxation rates on inputs. So the high taxation has increased the cost of doing business. Lack of industry, also skill mismatch and lack of information at labor market. So these are the issues which we need to address so that at least people can get jobs. Madam Speaker, I was looking at foreign direct investment report, and I've realized that 2021 to 2023, Kenya received the lowest foreign direct investment. Kenya received 751 million US dollars, while Uganda received 2.5 billion US dollars, and Tanzania received 1.3. Why is this? But you also realize that most of the companies which are investing in Uganda and Tanzania are companies from Kenya. Companies are moving from Kenya, relocated to East African countries, and producing for Kenya market through common external tariffs. These are issues we need to address. We need to address our tax system to be friendly to investors, so that when they invest here, our youth can be able to get jobs. We also need to create centers at county level to disseminate employment information, so that people who cannot access newspapers and other channels of communication, they can be able to access information. We also need to invest in programs and sectors which can produce jobs, so that our youth can get jobs. Lastly, Madam Speaker, the civil service need to create career path and progression, so that we are not going to have people who are saying that I cannot leave employment because there's nobody else who can succeed me, because I have a lot of experience and I've worked in this job for long. With those few remarks, I support Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Felix Adiwor, member for Langata.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for giving me this chance. First, I want to take this opportunity to thank the member of Embakasi Central, Major Dong, for bringing up this bill on public. First thing I want to talk about is effectiveness. How effective are you after the age of 55? We know very well that our life is actually categorized in a way you'd know how effective you are. From the age of 1 to 10, that is childhood, 10 to 20, realization of who you are. Career establishment picks up, an assurance from the age of 30 to 40, and definitely planning for retirement after the age of 50 to 60, and the bonus checks in. So when you say that you still want to give your services effectively after the age of 60, we really don't know what you're talking about. Number one, at the age of 60, you should have already had planned on your life after employment. And at that point, I want to again say, you walk into public institutions and you see how old the technologies that are there are. Today, we have new technologies coming in that the age of some of the public service members cannot allow them. They can't understand. That's why you walk into an office and you find that there are even computers that have never been switched on. And if they've been switched on, it's just maybe one application that has been used, just written word, and that all there. It's just collecting dust because there's no one with the skill to operate them. The second thing I want to talk about is planning for retirement. You know, if you know you're not going to retire, you will not plan for anything. You'll just continue working knowing very well that, you know what, I have this job. But then again, how many of our old public service members that you see retire and go into abject poverty? This is because they didn't even plan, because they knew that this is their job and their special skills, that they will be needed and recalled back to the service even after the age of 60. What is this special skill that you have that this new generation and the young people out here cannot do? Where you walk into an institution and you are told that the service cannot be given because an individual is not present. So we have our young people out here walking around in the streets of Nairobi and other major cities with degrees. We have those with those same skills, but because you are there not wanting to move, it's like you are welded on that seat. It was made for you and you alone. No, it is time that retirement age be looked at and be passed into a law, as this bill by a member of Parliament Embakasi Central is proposing. Another thing, a fool at 40 is a fool forever. If you didn't plan anything after 40, there's nothing else you can plan. There are very few people who we've seen create something after the age of 40, very few, and there are very few, that's why we know them. So there's nothing new you want to give us after the age of 50. What is this new thing that you want to give? What is this special skill you want to give after the age of 50? Actually, what the MP of Bwana KJ, MP Dagoretti South was saying is very important. That after that age you become you get into the oversight role to just see that other young people coming in. There are so many youths who are just jobless because you are stuck in that seat and you've refused to leave. That is the direction that we want to take, and that is why they will also, number one, reduce unemployment. New people, young people will come in, get the jobs, new skills, new technologies will come in. See the death of Postal Corporation. If you go and you travel a lot, you see how delivery of mails, delivery of postcards happen. But ours here.
Order, Honorable Felix Oduor.
Yes.
What is out of order, Honorable Basil? What is your point of order?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm looking at the numbers we have, and I think the quorum is not there. So I think we need to look into that. Hakuna quorum.
Wewe umetumwa na nani? Why would you raise that point of order when I'm already on the floor? I'm already on the floor. Madam Speaker, protect me.
Well, unfortunately, the Speaker cannot do anything else. I am going to request that the bell be rung for 10 minutes. Honorable members, you are not allowed to leave the chamber when the quorum bell is being rung. So I would like to encourage you to stay seated. Those are our standing orders, honorable members. And if there is any whip in the house, please ensure that we follow the standing orders, that members remain in the house. So, honorable members, 10 minutes have expired, so I order that the quorum bell is stopped. Honorable members, the Honorable Basil raised standing order number 35 concerning quorum, and we are not able to correct. So, if on the count under paragraph 1, a quorum does not appear to be present, the Speaker or the chairperson shall cause the division bell to be rung as on a division. And if no quorum is present at the expiration of the 10 minutes, and if the Speaker is in this chair, the Speaker shall adjourn the House until the next sitting without putting a question. So, honorable members, you may arise. Honorable members, and the time being 12:53, this House stands adjourned until today afternoon, Wednesday, the 21st day of February 2024 at 2:30 p.m. Honorable members, the Honorable Felix Adiwar will have a balance of 6 minutes. He has spoken for 4 minutes.